Okay, welcome to Colorful Profiles. Um, so this is a history course. It's, but it's not, obviously we all understand why we need to learn our history so we have a better insight into ourselves and into our future perhaps. But history tends to be a little dry and a little boring. So this one, they try to make it more, um, we get the sense of history through the lens of these remarkable characters in Jewish history. We'll be looking at them through original sources, historical documents, music, multimedia. So hopefully, it's going to be a nice experience um, of these stories, and we'll learn something about them. Um, If you don't mind muting yourself on Zoom, if you're on Zoom, just so that we don't have any um, noise contamination. Um, so each of the four lessons of this course are going to focus on a different theme. Today's theme is going to be, today we're focusing on courageous converts. There's many converts in Jewish history that were famous, made quite an impact. And we're going to look at some that maybe you haven't heard of and that have quite interesting stories that teach us a lot about what they felt, about being Jewish and how we could appreciate it ourselves. Um, so let's just talk about the topic very briefly about conversion in general, how we'll learn throughout this lesson what Judaism's attitude is towards conversion. But just generally speaking, um, if you compare it to like ancient times, right? You had this idea of these pagan gods, and everyone had their gods. And if you went to war, your gods were at war too. And the ones that lost were subjugated to the ones that won. So they had to kind of incorporate the gods of the victors. But some societies integrated the gods. Some of them rejected the new gods and they only took the victory god, whatever it was. There was always these like it was like an interplay. It's like a card game. Like if anyone has those nerdy card games, so it's like they basically were god battling. Um, and that was the idea. Like my gods are right and yours are wrong. That was always the concept. Eventually, and that's kind of like the pagan model, where it's like we can share God sometimes, or we fight each other, whatever it is. Eventually, organized religion and universalism became much more popular. So, what is universalism? That means that my God, my religion, my way of serving that God is for everyone. There's no such thing as you have your gods. They just have to be subjugated. They just have to serve. You just have to also serve my gods. No, I have a God, and he's your God too. That's the idea of universalism. Okay, so you all have to believe in my God. And not just that, but you also have to follow my teachings of how to serve that God, what that God wants from you. My religion is for everyone. That was the common uh, uh, strain that was popular. Judaism has that universalism. We do believe in that this God is for everyone, and that everyone should believe in our God, or the God of who created the universe. But we don't have the second thing, which is that we proselytize that people should adopt our way of worshiping that God, or our way of navigating and connecting to that God. We do have the Noahide laws, which are, we say, the basic seven laws that everybody is expected in the world to follow. But otherwise, outside of that, it's we don't really define for anyone else besides for Jews how to worship. Okay. Um, Now, not just that, but we don't even say you need to be Jewish. You don't need to upgrade in order for you to get this world to come concept, right? This is the reward that Jewish people are working towards, the world to come. Do you need to be Jewish to be inheriting the world to come. Now, you learn Sanhedrin, they asked the question there in the Talmud, and there's actually an opinion that says no, but the opinion that's accepted by Jewish law is the affirmative. As you can see in Maimonides, um, in the in text number one on page 3, the righteous individuals among the nations have a share in the world to come. So righteous individuals means that they keep the universal moral code for humanity, which is the Noahide laws. The Rebbe actually pushed that we should teach the Noahide laws because how could you expect someone to teach to keep them if they never heard of them and it's only in some Jewish book somewhere? So we have to teach them, but we never were able to in the past for obvious reasons. And actually, this course will bear that out very clearly, like what happened, what these converts had to deal with. But so right? And these are basic things like don't steal. You should have a society with justice system. You should, cruelty to animals, all that stuff. Okay. Now, so the basic idea, God desired that the Jewish people have a certain mission, a certain ideal, and we have to keep certain commandments. And then the rest of the world has their standard. That's the concept in Judaism. Um, and then, so as a result, Judaism is not a proselytizing religion. We're happy with whoever stays Jewish, you know, and whoever is. We're also happy with whoever stays non-Jewish. Okay, as long as they're friendly. But and you can see that in text 2, in Talmud of Yevamos, right? It talks about this is actually a Tosfot that's commenting on that Talmud. Talks about the negative implications of proselytizing. Not just that we happen to not do it. We strongly believe in not doing it. It causes problems. We do not attempt to convince people to convert to Judaism. We do not immediately accept anyone who asks us to convert, meaning we don't have such an open door policy. There will be severe divine consequences for any Jew that proselytizes. There's a lot of debate what that means, what they are, and what happens. So the most commonly, we see that it's referring to people who convert and they're forced to convert, or people who are insincere or have some ulterior motive. What ends up happening is that they end up not being very good at doing mitzvahs. They live not proper lives, and they influence the Jewish people around them, and they have they cause negative consequences. And now you have a giant, social issue, like a social issue with people coming in that are doing the wrong things or have the wrong motivations. And that's one explanation. And then Tosfos continues, however, we do accept non-Jews that are persistent in their desire to convert. So once you see that someone is persistent, then you say, okay, yeah, now you convert. Now, so yeah.
Have there been any famous or infamous proselytizers?
Interesting. Have there been any famous proselytizers? That's a very interesting question.
In Judaism.
In Judaism. Well, the false messiahs come to mind.
Yes.
But I don't know that they went around trying to convert people to Judaism. Maybe Jesus was a false. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. It's an interesting question. Definitely have to look into that. So anyways, so the question that bears out of here is like, why do we accept it at all? If we don't believe that it's necessary, in fact, it could be undesirable. Why is it, by the way, an interesting thing about it being undesirable? One more point. There's an interesting, the idea that we just said that the convert won't keep the commandments so well, and it's going to cause issues. There's actually a convert that says there's a sage that was a convert who says the exact opposite. And he says the converts are going to be so good at keeping the mitzvahs that it's going to reflect poorly on the other Jews. And the other Jews are going to be judged negatively. So we don't want converts because they're too enthusiastic and they're too sincere.
Who was that?
Who said that line? That was a contemporary of the Tosfos, one of the commentaries, like Rashi, grandchildren age. So around the 1100, there was a ger. His name is Avram Hager. It's quoted by Tosfos on the Gemara. So it's basically, it's very interesting. It's the exact opposite reason, but it also makes sense. Um, anyways, so it's like an interesting thing. We don't want people who are uh, too inspired around us. It makes us look bad.
You make us look bad when we
Yeah,
argue all the time.
and that too. Yeah. Okay. But anyway, so why do we accept converts at all? Just close the book on conversion, say it's not a good idea for us. We'll just do our thing, and you'll do your thing. What's how do we even have a concept of conversion, right? So there's a very simple answer, um, right? If someone's insisting on converting through, and we'll see how the process works in the story that we're about to say. If someone insists on converting, that means that they have a Jewish spark somewhere. They have some kind of Jewish there's something in there that is pushing them in a very sometimes illogical way towards conversion, and they're going through some hurdles to get there, and that reveals a potential that was buried there secretly in a non-Jewish life in a non-Jewish body, but the soul was always Jewish, and not just was it Jewish, but it was too holy to be born as a Jew. That's kind of one of the explanations. It had a specific mission. It had a specific reason why it needed to come in as the way it was born. And only by doing that was it able to eventually, it had to go through all these things and to come out and to convert. Yeah. We'll talk more deeply about it at the end of the lesson, but yeah. Question? Okay, yeah.
Did that answer the question?
Yeah.
For a convert to get
Yeah.
it officially at the time of conversion, or was it always there and then it was sort of fully realized?
I can answer that at the end. Yeah. The answer is neither. Okay. Text 4, page 4, text 3. Yeah, depends. Okay. Our sages, this is text 4. It talks about, this is from the Chida. He talks about this concept of that a ger was always a ger. There was no such thing. He wasn't a non-Jew. He was a ger. He just happened to have been temporarily a non-Jew. Our sages teach us that when we received the Torah at Mount Sinai all those years ago, the soul of the convert who would join us only many generations later was already present. The soul was at the incredible event at Mount Sinai, although its actual joining our people was deferred until now. So for whatever reason, it was decided that this soul needed to be coming into the Jewish people in this circuitous path, in this very roundabout way. And that's how we view it. Once we establish that that's in fact the case. And we don't have any radar detector. We don't have any like spectrometers or anything that can sense these things. So we just rely on the person to come to us and to tell us that they are wanting to join this ridiculous group of people. And if they still want to after what we say and do, then we know it must be legit. What?
Hager, is that the Hebrew name for convert?
The convert. Yeah. Ger means yeah, a ger means a foreign, yeah, stranger, a foreigner, but we refer to it whenever when the Torah says ger, yeah, when the Torah says ger, it means, well, not always, but it depends where it is, but yeah, it's stranger. Well, it talks about gerim in Chumash. There's a whole mitzvah about gerim. I mean, it's a major, yeah. Oh well.
So it means convert.
Well, yes, in the context. It depends on the context, but yeah. But in the Talmud it says ger shenis gayer, a ger that converts. So that's that's the Chida that says that idea. The reason why the Talmud calls it a convert that converts is even not a non-Jew that converts is because he never was a non-Jew if he converted. That's that's the idea. All right, moving on now. So our attitude basically is someone who converts, he has something unique to offer that if he wouldn't have converted, if he would have been born Jewish for some reason, that wouldn't have been the case. Maybe he's bringing in something from his life, or maybe there's some spiritual energy that he has, or something that is going to be unique about that situation, right? So we'll see in that we'll see through these stories, we'll really get a sense of that. We'll start, you may have heard of who this is, but maybe not know all the details of his journey. The first convert we're going to be talking about is Onkelos. Okay. Onkelos, this is around like 50 years after the second temple was destroyed, right? So Judaism, the Jewish people are not in a good place. They're, it's not a great time to join. Okay. So we have an emperor in the year 117 CE. His name is Trajan. He died. And the Jewish people, and he was horrible to the Jewish people. And the Jewish people saw his replacement as someone that they thought would work out a lot better. And they actually weren't far off because Hadrian was the replacement. Hadrian had pretty good connections with some of the sages. Is actually in the Talmud all these philosophical discussions between Hadrian and Rabbi Yeshua. And he visited Israel. He actually made a big visit to Israel. You see the coin on page 5 that was minted in honor of his visit. So that's a really big deal, I guess. I don't know how often they mint coins. So he even at some point granted permission to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. But those hopes were dashed. Hadrian eventually he began to suspect that the Jewish people were going to rebel against him. There were other actors that were trying to convince Hadrian to take a stronger hand against the Jews, the Samaritans and others. And so he basically decided that he's going to plow over Jerusalem and rename it this Roman Hellenistic city called Aelia Capitolina, right? And he even put a temple to Jupiter on the Temple Mount. So Bar Kokhba ended up fighting the Roman and rebelling. And it was a really good rebellion. It looked promising, but it was quashed eventually. And the Jewish people, they came down hard on the Jewish people. They were brutal. They banned every single Jewish practice. It was very, very difficult. Many sages were killed. It was
Mm-hmm.
horrible. This terrible, cruel Roman Caesar had a nephew named Onkelos. Okay, Hadrian's sister's son. It was his nephew, and he converted to Judaism. Okay, not sure if he converted before the rebellion or after the rebellion. It's not so clear, but we're going to look at some of the stories, how this developed in history. So, where is it mentioned?
Yeah.
We're about to look inside the sources where we find him. Yeah. So one place that he's mentioned is on page 7, text 4. By the way, it's not so simple to identify Onkelos. There's another guy who did a very similar thing, and his name is Aquilas, and there's a whole debate which one is which. So, but we're giving you the simplest version of it. And if you want to research more, there's many books on Onkelos. It's a very fascinating subject, Onkelos, and who he was and what he did. So this is a Medrash Tanchuma. It was written about a little later than these events happened. Onkelos the convert was a son of Hadrian's sister. He wished to convert, but he was afraid of his uncle Hadrian. Onkelos told Hadrian, "I want to engage in business." "If you're lacking in gold and silver," Hadrian replied, "my treasury is open for you." Onkelos said, "I wish to travel abroad on business in order to become acquainted with other people. I would like your advice about what investments to make." Hadrian replied, "When you see merchandise that is valued lowly and disregarded, invest in it. Eventually, its value will rise and you will make a profit." Onkelos traveled to the land of Israel and studied Torah. A while later, Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Yeshua met Onkelos and noticed that his countenance was changing. They told each other, "Onkelos is studying Torah." By the way, his countenance, he probably just growed a beard. I don't know exactly what countenance change there was. Onkelos is studying Torah. As Onkelos became close to these scholars, he began asking them many questions, and they supplied him with explanations. Onkelos returned to his uncle Hadrian. Hadrian asked him, "Why has your countenance changed? Your business must have failed, or maybe someone is oppressing you." "No, I'm your relative. No one would oppress me. So why has your countenance changed?" "I have studied Torah and even circumcised myself." That'd do it.
That would
When I came to continents,
Yeah, that would like he came back, he looked tortured. I'm saying, who advised you to do such a thing? By the way, in the Roman, I guess in the Greek culture, it was really bad to do that, right? To circumcise. I don't know about Romans. He says, I consulted with you. He says, what? When I asked you what merchandise to invest in, you advised me. When you see merchandise that is valued lowly and disregarded, invest in it. Eventually, its value will rise. I traveled among all the nations of the world, and I could not find a nation as lowly valued and disregarded as the Jewish people. This nation is destined to rise. Hadrian's advisor told him, since Onkelos has converted, you should kill him. Hadrian replied, my nephew Onkelos was destined to convert from the moment he was conceived. So Hadrian didn't want to kill him because he I guess he saw this as truth. Like he's meant to be a Jew. That's how Hadrian, that's how this Medrash relays it. And this is the historical background of when Onkelos converted. He didn't convert to join a group that he thought was on the up. He joined a group that he thought was doing really poorly. So, and it was and obviously he put his life at stake. It wasn't easy. I mean, he had to go back to his uncle and risk being killed. And he almost was killed. The advisor wanted to kill him. It's probably a miracle that he wasn't. There's other clues in the Talmud about his motivations and more about his achievements and kind of his attitude of why he wanted to be Jewish. So this really just told us kind of that one day he decided to do that, to become a Jew. So let's look in the Talmud how the Talmud describes this another story that happened probably after the conversation, or maybe a while after. It doesn't say, there's no timelines here for this. It's really a long time ago. So the Talmud in Avodah Zarah 11a. Onkelos, the son of Kalonimus, converted to Judaism. The Roman emperor sent a troop of Roman soldiers to seize him and bring him to the emperor. However, Onkelos attracted them to Judaism with Torah passages that he cited for them, and they converted. The emperor dispatched the second troop of Roman soldiers after Onkelos and ordered them to avoid discussions with him. As the soldiers arrested Onkelos and led him away, he said to them, let me tell you something trivial. A minor official holds a torch in front of the high official. The high official holds a torch for a duke for the governor, and the governor for the emperor. Now, does the emperor hold a torch before the common people? No, the soldiers replied. Onkelos continued, your God holds a torch in front of the Jewish people. Yet God holds a torch in front of the Jewish people. As the Torah states, God went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead the way for them, and by night in a pillar of fire to provide light for them. The entire troop converted to Judaism. The emperor dispatched a third troop of soldiers to arrest Onkelos. He ordered them not to talk to Onkelos at all. As the soldiers were leading Onkelos away, he saw a mezuzah affixed to the doorpost. He placed his hand on the mezuzah and turned to the soldiers, asking, what is this? You tell me, the soldiers replied. Onkelos explained to them, it is standard practice throughout the world for a mortal king to sit inside his palace while his servants guard him from the outside. But not so the God of Israel. His servants, the Jewish people, sit inside their homes while he guards them from the outside. This is stated, God shall guard your departure and your arrival from now and to eternity. It's in Psalms. When the soldiers heard that, they also converted to Judaism. Consequently, the emperor sent no more soldiers after Onkelos.
Are they just proselytizing?
That's a question that some people ask. Why was he allowed to just convert people? And so they say that he was saving himself. So it was permitted. I think it's different. I think that he had an ability I think he had an ability to see that they were people that can be converted to Judaism. It's possible.
He's a great communicator.
Yeah, that too. And we'll talk about that right now. He was able to communicate why he converted to Judaism in a way that they would relate to, right? So what principles, elements of Judaism do you think, from the way he described it, attracted him to Judaism? Like, what did he see in value in Judaism that he was pointing out to the soldiers? You could just think about it and write it down. You don't, or not write it down, but or suggest it if you think of something.
Well, he made an analogy between what God, or maybe a distinction between what God does and what the king
Hmm.
of their, or the emperor does.
Right.
God protects and the king collects taxes.
Right. So that's a big distinction. Yeah, and that's kind of he was relating it. Yeah, he was and he said another thing that God is working to protect us. Like that's one of God's jobs to protect us, whereas a king, our job is to protect him, right? So it's kind of if you look at Roman theology or the gods at the time, they were these immoral or amoral, capricious people or beings that you needed to please, you needed to cater to, you needed to needed to like convince to be on your side, whatever it is. But it wasn't about you; it was about them. That's what they were. Those were the gods were you were their underlings, and that was your entire being. That was your entire thing. And if you're lucky, the gods will throw you a bone. That was the idea. If if you beg them enough or you please them. But Onkelos was trying to say that this is totally different. You've never heard of this type of thing. This is God has devotion to us. We're devoted to him, but it's a two-way street. And that's what Onkelos was showing them, and they were like, "What?" Yeah. So that's what got them. And he was able to communicate it in like a language that a soldier, like he's saying a deep philosophical thing almost, and he's saying it in a way that these soldiers who were probably illiterate were able to understand. Um, and it's beautiful how he uses a mezuzah to show it, and he uses it's like a simple way of teaching. So it was very brilliantly encapsulated these fundamental foundational beliefs of Judaism. And it's fair to say that this is what attracted him to begin with to Judaism. So we saw in text 4 that his teachers were Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer. These were the men. These were like the leading scholars of the time. They took him under their wing, and they really, really worked with him, and he became one of the greatest scholars ever. Right. So what is one of his accomplishments? This is the Targum Onkelos, which is the translation of the Torah into Aramaic. Aramaic was the popular language for people who didn't know Hebrew. That's what they knew. If they didn't, they spoke Aramaic back then. So he wanted to make the Torah more accessible. So he translated it into Aramaic. Now, it's not all his own translation. He based it off of earlier translation, and he also, everything he did was worked with his teachers, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Eliezer. But the translation was so powerful, it's not just a translation, but it's also an interpretation, right? So he solved a language barrier that was a really big language barrier, which he probably identified with because he was a convert, right? And he also was able to give insight and interpret the Torah, which was also, he was the earliest commentary. Because he's not just a translation. I think there was a translation before him, but this one is used as a commentary by Rashi, by everyone. The way that Onkelos translates something tells you about the real meaning of the words beyond what just the definition is. And in the appendix of your books, there's actually examples of this we could see later, of where his translations actually are interpretations. And there's even entire books, even in English. Art Scroll has one, I think, of just Onkelos's interpretations, like just learning how Onkelos learned the Torah, right? We always look at him when we learn him as just an Aramaic translation, but he's much, much more than that. And when they first printed the Chumash, the Bible, the Jewish Torah, you could see it on page 12. you got Rashi, and right on the side you have Onkelos, and that's the standard, right? Those two are always on the page of your Chumash. Okay.
And what was the prevailing language at that time? Hebrew or Aramaic?
Most people spoke Aramaic. Yeah.
Okay. So
The layman was speaking Aramaic. They used Hebrew letters. Yeah. Yeah.
But the Torah was written in Hebrew,
Yeah.
and then
He translated every word for word.
So if
He interpreted it all.
Right. I was saying that his word choice is an interpretation, but every word there is there's every word is accounted for. I'm saying like I'm saying he doesn't, it's not like a loose free translate. I mean, it's like every word is there.
every word counts.
Yeah. You see how what he understands a word to be by how he translates it. I mean, that's the extent of it as an interpretation.
So the interpretation is like there's the same amount of words in Onkelos than in.
I don't know if it's 1-to-1, because sometimes Aramaic will break a word into two or something like that. But it's an attempt that
But you're
I
not
mean,
changing the structure.
every word is
Sorry.
I'll tell you, every word is translated. That's what I.
Translating it to Aramaic.
Yeah.
It's not interpreting it.
He's not adding like
He's
sentences, right?
interpreting it enough to go.
Right. His
Yeah.
translation choice is an interpretation, right? The words he's choosing are purposeful. He could have chosen other words. And there's even translations that do choose other words. So you can compare them and you can see why Onkelos is diverging and what his different opinion is. Yeah.
44 and 45
Yeah.
examples of the subtle differences.
Right.
Oh,
So
Yeah.
Beginning on page 45. But
Yeah.
we see-
It didn't make it into the lesson, unfortunately. You guys didn't pay enough. But it's in the book.
Wow.
Okay. Anyways, that translation became the translation. It's approved. It was approved. It was sanctioned. It was published, and that's our translation of the Torah. And it's really cool because that can lead to that the amount that gives us is invaluable because biblical Hebrew is very very we're much further from that than from Onkelos
mhm.
and Aramaic. So this is a treasure trove. What were you gonna say, Irv?
No, just the very first one here, Vayir, descended.
Yeah,
He translates to revealed. That's like a profound,
yeah,
difference in
Yeah.
interpretation.
yeah.
About the milk, you mean? Is that what you're reading?
No, I'm reading the one on, Vayir,
42.
God,
Page what?
42.
Page 42, Vayir Hashem, God descended on Mount Sinai is the, literal, and then God revealed himself on Mount Sinai, which is, that's profound.
Right. So his contribution to Torah cannot be overstated. I mean, he broke down serious barriers. He was I mean, there's no overstating what he did. And you can posit that as a ger, that's what gave him this drive to do this, to say, I'm going to open up the Torah to so many more people. And even the deepest scholars can benefit from what he did.
But
Yeah.
And that translation in particular, that's kind of stuck, right? I mean, because we always talk about the revelation.
Because it's,
of
yeah,
Hashem, so it
yeah.
is,
The revelation of,
of Hashem.
you're saying his way of viewing it. Yeah, right. Exactly. I'm saying all the other commentators base themselves off of him. There's very few that will just, I mean, not that very, some people will diverge, but he is viewed, because he's not just himself, he's also representing his teachers at the time, and everyone who was agreed to the translation, right? That translation became accepted by the sages. So it's authoritative, not just because of him, but also because of who read it and who accepted it and put it out there. So that, yes. So now, by the way, we have a custom till today to read the parsha. It's a Shulchan Aruch that we're supposed to read the parsha with Onkelos before Shabbos. There's practical reasons for it, so that we should understand the parsha. Which, every parsha every week you read twice. It says to read it twice, the verse, and once with the translation. And the translation that people use was Onkelos. So it's called Shnayim Mikra ve'echad Targum. You read it twice and you translate it once. And Onkelos was the one that's used for it. Now, practically, it's so that you should know the parsha, right? So you might probably prefer to use English, but mystically, for mystical reasons, and Hasidim and people who care about mystical things, stick to Onkelos. So we read twice and we still don't know Chumash. I don't know. It's just not coming. I don't know Arabic. But we read twice the verse, and then once we just read it because there's some holiness that Onkelos embedded into his words, and so even reading his words. And if you think about it, the Chumash we say that the Torah's words themselves are worth, you can say them, and there's actually, you're doing something even if you don't understand them. Aramaic, if he took that concept and he put it into Aramaic, he like put that, he put the same spirit into Aramaic, and so it has that, you're basically taking that and you're bringing it down a level in a certain sense. So that's what the idea is. Okay, so Onkelos was amazing, and we see that he took tremendous personal risk and he changed the world. Now let's talk about our next subject, Ovadia. Ovadia Hager, Ovadia the convert. I see no one's perking up and saying, I know that guy. Okay, good. I didn't know him till today, until I looked at the no, I'm joking. Okay. So this is a very unusual historical case. So he's really not known to Jewish history until recently, relatively recently, especially in the scope of Jewish history. How did we discover this story? Um, so let's just give the background to the discovery of the story briefly. Jewish law mandates that you can't trash holy texts. You have to put them in something called a geniza, into shemus or geniza, which means hidden and it's or buried. So this process, so it goes into storage or it's buried. That's the idea. There's a synagogue in Cairo called the Ben Ezra Synagogue, and they used to just throw their papers in. They had behind the ark, there was like a slot, and they would just throw in all the papers. And the Rambam put his papers in, the Rambam's children put their papers in. The whole community was throwing papers in for 1,000 years. And then in the late 19th century, mid 19th century, someone found it, and they found original pieces of manuscripts from the Rambam. They found books that we never had before from sages that we never knew existed. They found stories, and they found the autobiography of Avadia, and they found more things about Avadia in there. There was just like a whole Avadia. There's a lot of Avadia stuff in there and it took a lot of time to interpret all this stuff and to work it out. It was well preserved by miracle because of the weather in Egypt was so good for preserving in the stuff. That it was the only reason it was able to last. But they're still putting stuff out, and there's a website that you can see everything that they have or from the Geniza.
And who was they? Is that,
Who's the one doing it?
yeah,
Um, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the president of Egypt. I have no idea. It's a good question. I don't know who has the
People of that Jews, Dara Horn, she wrote a book called The Guide to the Perplexed, which is it's a novel.
right.
It's about beginning the tyrant.
Yeah, it's a good question. What was the process of getting all that stuff out of there and whatever? Yeah, rescuing it. It's for sure not just being handed over by any friendly Egyptian government.
Right.
That's a good question. But it was found a while ago. Maybe they were under some kind of occupation and were able to.
I think it may have been seriously, a professor at Cambridge who was
Where he,
the first one to.
right, yes, and yeah, that's right. So, anyways, in this collection we found Ovadia, which is really cool. And he wrote his own. He calls himself Ovadia Hager, Ovadia the convert. And there's little fragments, there's small bits and pieces of his autobiography, as well as pieces, other pieces that refer to him. And so we patched them together, and we're able to have a glimpse of his fascinating story. Imagine finding this. Wow, it's like incredible. Just finding this like how many personalities do we have? Like firsthand account. These documents were started being found in the mid in the 19th century.
Yeah.
Yeah. But his particular story came to light I don't know when they came to light. There's an entire website just about his life, like reconstructing it and following up all the references and just building the whole story and the map of his life. It's called and there's books written on him. It's called um there's a website. It's called johannes-obadiah.org. Yeah, okay. So yeah, you could visit that website and you can find his there's a whole shrine to him. Um, so we're going to be using translations and transcriptions that were painstakingly produced by Professor Norman Golb, which are all on that website. He did some editing for clarity because I guess he needed. Um, so some words weren't deciphered, so that's going to be indicated with brackets. And we also are missing the beginning of the autobiography. So we have to basically, we're picking up where Ovadia, he's in mid-sentence, and he describes his father settling in Oppido Luciano, a small town in southern Italy. Um, and his birth is around, and he says his birth is around 1074. Okay. The family was of Norman origin. The Normans occupied southern Italy during this period. Um, his birth name was Johannes, and he wrote his biography in the third person. So he's going to rewrite like Johannes went here, Johannes went there. Okay. So getting into the autobiography on page 14. Um, Now let me know what this sounds like when I read this story. Okay? It will remind you of something. Whose name is Oppido. His wife, he took a wife named Maria, and Maria conceived and bore a son unto Drew, her husband, two sons on the same day. The first, what? Yeah, you got it already. The firstborn, according to the usual manner of women, as to their children, to whom they gave the name Rogerius, that is Roger. As for the second, his lower parts came out first. His mother bearing him with great pain, she gave him the name Johannes. This is Jovian, Giovan. The youths grew up. Rogerius became a man who sought the sword and warfare, whereas Johannes became a man seeking knowledge and wisdom in books. What does that sound like, Yosef Yitzchak? Yeah, Yaakov and Esav. Right. Exactly. He's using the same kind of writing style and whatever. He's purposely connecting himself to those two. And it was actually common that the firstborn would become a warrior knight or whatever, and then the other one would go off to be a religious leader, a priest or whatever, and learn the religion, be a scholar. Um, at some point in his childhood, Johannes's world was rocked by a bombshell report. It happened at the time, in text 8. It happened at that time regarding the Archbishop Andreas, the high priest of the city of Bari, that the Lord put the love of Torah of Moses into his heart. He forsook his land, his priesthood, and all his glory, and came to the city of Constantinople, where he circumcised the flesh of his foreskin. He endured sufferings and hardships. He rose and fled for his life from before the Gentiles, seeking to slay him. But the Lord God of Israel saved him from their hands in purity. The Lord protects proselytes. Blessed be the Lord forever. Many went up after him, and observing his deeds, they did as he had done. They also entered the covenant. So this Bari, this priest he actually caused a lot of issues. The Archbishop of Bari. Archbishop is a very big thing. He was in charge of the whole city. So him converting caused quite a stir. All the sages of Edom, which is the way we refer to Christianity, Edom is Esav's nation, and then eventually Rome, were ashamed when they heard the report about him. Johannes heard of the events concerning him while he was still a youth in the house of Drew, his father. So he clearly had a deep impression on him when he saw that this was happening, and it caused him to think a little bit. And this kind of put a seed in there that was starting to germinate. Around 1096, Johannes became a priest. So now he had a dream. He had a dream, and in the dream doesn't really say what happened in the dream. Honestly, it just says that the dream caused him. that he wanted to now study in Hebrew. For some reason, the dream motivated him to learn Hebrew, and he ends up learning Hebrew. Something about the Crusades, and he saw the Crusades waging war in Jerusalem, and so he started learning Hebrew. And then his autobiography picks up with his reaction to the dream, where it causes him in order to decipher his dream, that's why he learned Hebrew. Fine. Now, he doesn't actually detail his conversion in his autobiography. He may have been given this information, somewhat briefly in the story, but it's also possible that he omitted these details for reasons that we'll see later. It's possible why someone would omit how they converted and what was the process. There's reasons why. Luckily, there were other documents in the Cairo Geniza that will fill us in on these details. First, we have a page from a siddur that he wrote himself. I guess if you wanted a siddur back then, you had to write your own. And he wrote out a siddur to daven from. This inscription gives us a date for the conversion, which corresponds to August, which is September 1102. So you can see that siddur on page 16, that page. Imagine finding this. This is incredible. So now we have a date, but where was this conversion done? Answers to this question can be found in another document uncovered in the Geniza. The following document was written by Rabbi Baruch ben Yitzchak of Aleppo. He was the rabbi of Aleppo in Syria. It was given to Avadia as a certification for his conversion when he ended up in Aleppo. So he converted in Italy, and then he ended up in Aleppo, and he got a letter from the rabbi certifying his conversion. So we actually have the whole letter. To all places of worship and study, unto whom this letter shall reach, may they be granted myriad measures of peace. This man, the bearer of our letter, came to our city with an epistle from sages who dwell in his lands. They told us that this man is of a great family, that his father was an important officer, and that this man, Ovadia, is expert in the reading of their Christian books. Because of his understanding of what he read in their erroneous books, he returned to the Lord of Israel with all his heart. He's saying he returned to the Lord. It's like common to speak this way. This is not some interesting way of deriving things. This is how we actually view it. He returned to the Lord of Israel with all his heart, with all his soul, and with all his strength. And he became a proselyte in a law court of Israel. When he came to convert, they informed him that the Israelites were in sorrow, oppressed, despised, and scorned. He said to his informants, "Do I not know that the Israelites are despised and scorned? If only I would be worthy to join them, to join Israel." After it was discerned that he came out of love, they informed him of some lenient and some severe commandments. And they informed him of the punishment for infractions of the commandments. When he accepted all of the conditions, they circumcised him immediately. And when he was healed, they ritually immersed him. There were two sages there, standing on either side of him, and they also reminded him of some lenient and some severe commandments. So they're basically coaching him while they're converting him. By the way, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this, and they're like, all right, and then they cut him, and then they wait 2 days, and then they immerse him, and they're still telling him, by the way, yeah, don't forget to do your Erev Tafshilin, whatever. And then it's really funny, honestly, how they used to do this. Thus he was made an Israelite for every matter. And now, O our brethren, blessed may you be unto heaven. Be careful of the honor of this man. Take care that you do not injure him with words, that he be not injured by words of For the Lord has warned against injury and oppression toward him, as our rabbis taught. He who wounds the feelings of a proselyte transgresses 3 negative injunctions. This letter was written in his own hand by our master Baruch, the great and outstanding master. That's quite a signature. May he be No. May he be guarded by heaven, son of our master Yitzchak, may his soul rest in peace. Our master Baruch wrote this letter that it might be kept by Ovadia, the convert, for use in all communities of Israel to which he might go. So he carried around his Jewish passport, right? And that's what we got that we have it now.
How
So
did it happen, the Geniza then? Like when
he died.
and like they were like, okay, let's chuck his things or.
Yeah, probably.
It was like almost like a trash bin. I mean, there was a window or something. It's not like you placed anything in it. They found it was just basically, it was thick with documents.
Wow.
and
I
that
mean,
were- some
he-
of which were crumbling.
Yeah,
By the way,
it's
it was Salman
incredible.
Schefter, you know,
Yeah,
who's the one who went through all.
So it's like behind a wall or something?
Yeah.
yeah. Because there was like a slot to put
Yeah,
to
it's
put
not, it
this.
was like, you know.
Yeah, like how people dump their razor blades behind the wall.
Mountain.
The old top laundry chute.
Yeah, right.
It's all compostable.
Yeah.
Parchment, you know.
No.
Yeah. The Geniza was I think they're all in different museums around the world, most of the stuff. And but I think all of it is online, like on their website or on the website. But I don't know. It's fascinating. There's probably books just about this. But he probably threw out his conversion certificate after he already like was well established in the community. Like no one's like looking into it. Like when he shows up and he's new, that's when he needs it. Right? You don't need to keep it framed on your wall for eternity. You just need it for when you know, no one knows who your parents are. Okay. So this is an interesting description of a process of conversion, right? So first he was discouraged, then he was told about that he had to learn some of the mitzvahs. I mean, he was told there's mitzvahs, and he's told, by the way, there's consequences for these mitzvahs. This is not you're not opting into something, you know, that like a hobby. This is a very consequential decision. And then they showed him the consequence of his decision, and then they immersed him in the mikvah. Yeah. So, and that's what we do. Whenever someone comes to convert, we tell them you don't need to. Then we say, not only don't you need to, but it's gonna suck. And then we say basically all that stuff. And then when they finally want to come in, then we teach them and whatever. Fine. All right. Yeah.
So, struck me as they circumcised them right there, you know?
Yeah.
So to this day, if there's a conversion, circumcision is part of it, right? Or not?
Usually people come circumcised already. So you just need to ceremonially draw some blood or whatever, right? But if they don't, then yes. What do you want to say?
No,
Okay. Yeah.
But with anesthesia
Well, yeah, I mean,
before, no.
there's a mitzvah to feel the pain. I don't think you have to, right? I think you could get anesthesia, but if you want to do it right, you got to feel the pain. Certain Hadir, wait, but it's the same reason. Like some people, they don't get epidurals when they're giving birth. It's like it's a mitzvah to suffer. I don't know. Okay, moving ahead.
I didn't get an epidural. Yeah, no.
When they were, yeah.
you didn't get an epidural. You are how brave.
That was very brave.
You.
Well, anyway, so moving on here. So now one question you might maybe have, I don't know if you do, maybe you do. Why did he need this cover letter endorsing his conversion? He had the conversion documents. He had whatever, you know, he presented that to to the rabbi in Aleppo. Why did he need this extra letter? So perhaps he needed an extra letter because it was illegal to convert anybody. And if you were caught converting someone, you were killed by the Christians in Italy, right? They would kill anyone who performed a conversion. In fact, all of the Torah books that reference conversion, they actually say it in a way of like, we used to do this, but not anymore because it's illegal. Like in the olden days, conversion worked like this. So conversion was like this thing that had to happen secretly if it did happen at all. So he wasn't going to be walking around with his conversion documents. So he needed to get basically a cover letter that was anonymous, like didn't say who converted and which court of law, right? Which rabbis did it. and he needed to do it in Muslim-controlled country where it's not illegal for a Christian to convert to Judaism. So
Oh, that's why I did it in Syria.
yeah, so he had to go to Syria to get his letter that can actually be used. That's a theory. I don't know.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't know if it's for sure the reason. It doesn't write it anywhere, but saying that's a practical reason why he would have an anonymous letter that says nothing about who the court was. Because right nowadays we need to know who the court was. Because if it's some if it's a fake court, then it's a fake letter. So, but here I guess someone vouched for the veracity of it. Anyway, okay. Um, yeah. Okay. Then he talks about so what happened after his conversion. Then we have another gap in the autobiography. So we don't know exactly where Ovadia was from 1102 until 11110 and what he was doing at the time. It seems likely that he was in Syria, but the narrative picks up when he already travels from Syria to Baghdad around 1109 or 11 or 10 to 1010. So he talks about his tribulations and his deliverance in Baghdad in text 10 in his autobiography. Ovadia the convert then went from the city of Maxin and came to Rehovot, which is upon the river Euphrates. Then Ovadia the convert came to the city of Adina, which is Baghdad, capital of the Ishmaelites. Adina was the term that's used in Tanakh to refer to Bavel. So that's why he was referring to it as Baghdad, Babylonia. Fine. There came upon him tribulations, and ... The Gentiles sought to slay him, but Lord saved him. Ovadia the convert came, and he stood before the doorway of the synagogue, the academy. The servant installed Ovadia the convert in the house in which the Jews would pray, and they brought him provisions. It happened thereafter that Yitzchak, the head of the academy, directed that Ovadia the convert be with the orphan youths in order to teach him the Torah of Moses, the words of the greatest of the prophets, in the script of the Lord and the language of the Hebrews. So they hired him. He came to this Baghdad and they hired him to teach the orphans, which was customary. Like your tuition was paid for if you were orphaned back then, because the community was responsible to educate. The mitzvah is on the father usually to educate, to teach his son Torah, and he has to hire the people to teach in Torah. But if he can't, then the community has to. So this is an example of that custom. It's very cool. And it's also, you see how they accepted him, just like his letter exhorted them to, right?
They accepted him, but couldn't they just call him Ovadia? I mean, they may have accepted him, but if they're constantly calling somebody Ovadia the convert, that's a mixed message there.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I think if there was any scintilla of that being a negative thing, it would be completely prohibited according to the Torah. You're not yeah.
I think it's just like referring back people to like the son of something, and so they couldn't say the son.
They can't because
like
you don't have
Avram,
parents
it's
anymore.
like the same thing. So
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, it was customary. That was they called themselves that. I'm saying that I am Avram the Ger, or like that's what it seems like.
But I like that, 'cause you
Yeah.
no longer have parents.
Well, your parents is Avram Avinu.
Right, but you no longer.
You're spiritually.
original parents.
Yeah, your original parents are not. Yeah, exactly. But if you're right. If it was insulting to do, you were not allowed to do that. It's a clear boundary. If you cannot make someone feel bad, you cannot make a ger feel bad. It's an extra.
Right.
It's an extra prohibition. So for
either
sure,
that or it's the title of honor in that case.
Right.
Like, if it-
it's probably a title of honor, because I can't think of I don't know exactly how they used to view Gerim back then, but apparently they weren't that what's it called? Yeah, I don't think people. I mean,
Pretty rare, probably.
it was probably rare, and they probably respected them when they occurred. It wasn't.
especially given how hard it was, right?
Yeah.
Like how like they risked their lives back
Yeah.
then, not more.
Right. Yeah, look what he had to do. He had to like convert and then run to somewhere else and then get crazy. So this piece of the story tells us about his wanderings and fleeing from Italy. His life was in danger in Baghdad, and he saw Hashem's protection there. We also see how the Jewish community heeded the Jewish laws about how to treat a convert, and they took him in, they made him a teacher and everything. So then Ovadiah's biography continues to tell us about the anti-Semitism in Baghdad and how the Jews are being persecuted and suffering from the Muslim ruler. He talks about two false messiahs that he encountered in Baghdad. I wonder how often this happened. He saw two of them in his lifetime. Um, they all they pretended and they amassed followers, and then the whole thing fell apart, and the Muslims were mocking the Jewish people because it was embarrassing. It's very interesting. We probably never even heard of how many of messiahs there were. Then he moved back to Syria, and in 1121 he went to Egypt, passing through northern Israel on the way. While in Israel, Obadiah relates that he encountered a man named Solomon who claimed to be the Mashiach. Again, this guy's getting in touch with all the Mashiachs. The good part is he is a convert, so he has a BS detector. So he does not buy it. Solomon was actually a Karaite. It's really cool to see a reference to this splinter sect in his travels. So the Karaites rejected the oral law, yeah, and developed their own system of deriving law from the Torah. Ovadia was too sharp and knowledgeable to be fooled by messianic pretenders. He noted that Solomon. This is actually pretty funny. He noted that Solomon claimed to be a Kohen from the tribe of Levi, while Mashiach is supposed to be from King David. Oops, the tribe of Yehuda. Okay, so he's. I mean, it makes sense that a Karaite would say that. I think the Karaites actually do believe. There's a sect till today of in Israel of these people, and they think they do believe for something like that you have to be a Kohen to be Mashiach, and they have their own stuff. But either way, um, interestingly, he never visited. He didn't really seem to visit Jerusalem, probably because it was occupied by Christians, um, and that was not somewhere where he would want to be due to his background. He didn't really want to be mixed up in the Christian government. Um, Eventually reached Egypt, and that's really where his autobiography cuts out. And we don't know anything about his life in Egypt, and we don't know when he died. But there are a couple more incredible manuscripts from Ovadia that we found over there. I didn't find it. Someone found it. We actually have the oldest existing actual Jewish pieces of music are from him. He wrote music. He wrote like a liturgical song. Um, and this was sung in the Jewish community of Cairo, um, in the 12th century. So it's a liturgical poem, probably written for Shavuos, the holiday that's coming up. It's about Moses and how he was so. It's like talking about how exceptional Moses was, that he got the Torah to give, and the words they show a deep connection to the Torah and a deep, very meaningful. Like you can see that Ovadia had a very deep personal connection to to Shavuos, because that's when the entire Jewish people converted. The entire Jewish people accepted the Torah and began their relationship with Hashem, and you can see that in this song that he wrote. And we might as well listen to the song while we're at it, right? I didn't do any slides.
Vadia the Convert wrote the oldest surviving piece of Jewish sheet music. These pages were preserved in the Geniza storage room of Cairo's Ben Ezra Synagogue, which Ovadia would have frequented. Recently renovated, the Ben Ezra Synagogue still stands in its original location. This is the song.
How do they know the tune?
Were all those things above and below it,
No.
that's the trough maybe?
Yeah, the notes.
They had the notes.
But the whole thing, the Nicodot were added just for our benefit, right? That was-
I don't know where the original sheet music you can find on ovadia.com.
Look like it had the.
Really?
You had some notes, but how do you know?
No, that works for me.
I don't think they added anything. I'm not sure they added anything.
Yeah.
They found the notes,
Yeah,
and
but you're right.
so this Ovadia left us his incredible story of his persecution and wanderings, and literally just because he wanted to be Jewish, that's why he had to suffer this much. I mean, he could have just lived a normal Muslim life or Christian life, and he would have been fine, as Johannes Luciano, the priest. But he needed to be he saw the truth, and he needed to live his life. Yeah.
His song? Are we singing his song anymore?
No one knows it.
I think we should.
Completely- It's a hard song to sing. It's an Italian, by the way, the notes are Italian. This was done in the Italian, and I don't know what this means, but apparently it was an Italian style notes or music. And this is kind of so this was his, I mean, when someone makes a song like, yeah.
Like Gregorian almost like.
Well, that was because of the way they sang it. I mean, they could have sang it differently. I mean, the choir that sang it was doing it more like a Gregorian. I mean, I guess the tune would be like that anyway, no matter how you.
Yeah.
But it's really, really, really beautiful. It probably also, because it's so old, had something to do with the traditional Jewish way of making music to begin with.
Right.
It wasn't. I mean, they say that the temple music was close to Gregorian chants, by the way. Yeah, that's what I mean. Historically, I mean, I've seen that they say that,
Cool.
but this being the oldest Jewish song that we have, it's possible that he didn't just that this was actually the sound of the Jews at the time. It could be. I don't know. Or it could be just what he took from Italy.
Certain parts of Lebanon,
Yeah.
like the like Moroccan, Turkish
Yeah.
tunes for Yom Kippur are like very similar style as well.
Yeah.
Like,
So I guess because he was in Egypt
okay.
and Syria, but it's incredible. So I mean, and you see, as a convert, he took something from Italy from his youth, and he brought it into the holiest. It's so holy, this song, and it's
Pretty well to hear something that was sung like like
it's hearing
1,000 years
we're
ago.
hearing the echoes of Avadia.
Yeah,
That's what
it's
I was
amazing.
literally crying when it was like I can't. Yeah.
So
When did they dig this up?
when did they produce it?
I don't know.
This
Oh,
music?
this? I don't know.
Like, when did they
I have to
produce it?
go on avadia.com or whatever. I have no idea. Yeah.
Can't
Yeah.
remember even.
But I'm fascinated by this character now. Like I want and yeah, so it's just beautiful. Yeah.
Because we've heard the name Ovadia, I mean, it's
Yeah.
a contemporary name too.
Yeah.
So it
It's a
was
famous
great
rabbi.
There was yeah, it was after the prophet. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's the originating.
He's not. No, no one knew who he was. He's not famous. There's another Avadia that had corresponded with the Rambam that what is more famous, but it's not him. He was later. I mean, that guy was earlier. The other Avadia, that Avadia is more famous, and he also, I think he's a Ger too. Might be wrong. The other Avadia, who the Maimonides corresponded with, I think is also a convert. Happens to be.
Who's the Ovadia that passed away not too long ago?
Ovadia Yosef. Ovadia Yosef, the rabbi. Yeah. So let's go to the next our next subject. This guy, his name is Avraham ben Avraham. So the above cases illustrated the steep prices that some of the people who converted paid. They joined a very difficult lifestyle. And you know what? They avoided, they dodged some bullets and they made it through. Some of them didn't. And this story is kind of that one. All right, so you know this? You've heard of this? Oh, yeah, okay, interesting. The parts that you might have heard this story, it is a famous story in Jewish culture. We do pass this, it's an orally passed down story. We don't have it we have it in some books, but like it's not the same as like the other two that we have. So there's our story takes place in the Polish Lithuanian Commonwealth in the mid 18th century. The protagonist is a young Polish nobleman named Valentine, a member of the Potocki family. So the Potockis were nobles, and so his father was known as Graf Potocki. So the Polish noblemen were known as Grafs. So in Poland and Lithuania, it was very illegal to convert to Judaism. Okay, it was like being a communist in America a long time ago. So, and it carried the most severe consequences, which is death. So, if you even discussed converting, you were also killed. So you weren't allowed to do any of that stuff. So the story we're going to be talking about now was actually passed orally from generation by Lithuanian Jews. This is a big deal in the Lithuanian Jewish culture, which there's only brief mentions of this story in print. Okay, so as a result, the story has a bunch of legendary details. It's really the stuff of legends, and multiple versions of it abound. Okay, so we'll do our best to actually reconstruct the most accurate version and also give some validity to it, besides for the oral traditions that we have, which are in some ways more valid. But when you have 10 oral traditions, you need a way to pick one. So, so the first time the story appeared in print was in 1862, which is quite a while after the story is purported to have happened. So it's in a small booklet called Geirei Hatzedek, The Righteous Converts, was published in a city named Johannesburg in the Kingdom of Prussia, which is in Poland now. There were Christian censorship laws, and they did not allow they didn't Meaning, no, I'm sorry, the opposite. The Jewish censorship laws the Christian censorship laws were more lax over there, and so there was a lot published in that era, in that time, in that place. So, um, this is going to be our primary version that we're going to base our conversation off of in this text. It's on text 12. This is sort of a dramatized version of it, probably. The year was 1719. A Polish nobleman named Potocki and had a brilliant son. The local university in Vilna was no longer sufficient for the boy, so his father sent him to study in Paris. At the same time, a nobleman in the region of Samogitya named Zarembi also had a brilliant son, and he was also sent to study in Paris. The two young men became very close friends. One day, as the two young men were strolling in a garden, they happened across an old man reading a book, engrossed in study. Impressed by the way the old man was studying, the young man asked, "What is the name of the book you are studying? What are its contents? Theology or some other subject?" The old man told him, "It is a book of the divine Torah." "Please teach us from the precious book," the young man asked the venerable elderly scholar. "We also want to learn this Torah of truth." "My dear children," the old man responded, "I cannot teach you from this book because you will not understand its contents and style. Because I don't understand the content." I'm joking. Also, you are forbidden from studying this book by law because it is contrary to your religion. "Listen to me, wise old man," the young student said. I guess that was the name that you called people. Yeah. "God has blessed us with great intelligence. Have mercy on us and teach us this dear Torah. Do not be afraid of the government. We will keep it secret. Please do this for us and show us the light." The old man had mercy on the students and studied with them. They studied Torah for 6 months and understood it well. They recognized that Jewish religion is the truth and can no longer tolerate their religion. "Can we just stay here all our lives?" they asked each other. "Let us travel to Amsterdam, where we will convert." Okay, so that's the story that we have. Okay,
Good teacher or really good student, 6 months.
6 months. Yeah, back then they didn't have time. They lived till 40 something. They didn't have time to be like equivocating for 75 years. Okay. So they ended up, Valentine still had his doubts, and he said maybe Christianity is still right, and I don't know if I'm really got to change my life around. So he just went back home, and he said, "You know what? I'll study in Rome, and in the Vatican, I'll seek out some scholars, and I'll figure my stuff out." So he asked his father for some cash to go study in Rome. His father was like, "Yes, do that," and he went to Rome. And he discovered that the Pope was really a charlatan. I don't want to go into the details of what it says he discovered, because this is like the stuff that we would like put into it just to like juice up the. But either way, he found a charlatan means he's a faker. He stood for one thing and really did other things in the back. Yeah, he wasn't what he said he was. So he ended up seeing that, that's not what he wanted to do. So he ended up going to Amsterdam to convert. Why was Amsterdam the place where you go to convert? So it was just a more multicultural city. There was just more openness there, and the Christian authority was a little more lax. So it was easier to go and convert there, under the radar. So he arrives in Amsterdam, and Valentine successfully converted and took himself the name Avraham, after Avraham, the first Jew. He didn't realize that we call all converts Ben Avraham. So he ended up being Avraham Ben Avraham. They should have warned it. Yeah, it was too late by then. He couldn't do anything about it. So he's Avraham Ben Avraham. Okay, so that's just the background of this Patitsky. Now we get to his eventual struggles with that choice. He returns after studying under the rabbi for a few years in Amsterdam. Imagine what he could do in a few years, right? Okay, Avram made a dangerous decision. He moved back to the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. He was still careful, and he didn't go any place where he had been known under his previous identity. So he's hiding there, because he would be known as the son of the Graf. If he would be discovered, it would be a problem, because it's illegal to be a convert. So he settled in a small town named Ilya. And remember this name because it's important. Settled in a small town called Ilya. By the way, other sources debate that they say other towns that it was, but this source says Ilya, fine. Okay, where he thought he could remain anonymous. He spent his days in the synagogues, engrossed in study and prayer, but this decision proved fatal. Okay, continuing in the same account, the righteous Potocki traveled to Amsterdam from Amsterdam to Lithuania on page 13. He spent every moment of his time engrossed in Torah study or prayer. His heart was completely devoted to Torah, and he would fast and subject his bodies to affliction. Very Lithuanian. Yeah, that's how they did it in Lithuania. It's a different way. His praises cannot be adequately be told in writing. During prayer, his eyes would pour with rivers of tears. One day, this holy man came to the synagogue and saw a young man, the son of a local tailor, laughing, shouting, and wildly throwing his hat in the air in front of the synagogue's holy ark. Potocki was very upset, and he scolded the young man. "You insolent fellow! Why aren't you showing respect for God? How can you stand in the synagogue in front of the ark with your head uncovered? Put your hat back on." The young man's wicked father was enraged, and he went to the local nobleman and told him, "You should know that the lost son of the great nobleman Potocki is here in our town, sitting in the synagogue. He has converted to Judaism, and he sharply denigrates your religion. Send officers to arrest him before he flees." The nobleman did as the wicked man advised him. He brought 300 officers, and they surrounded the town. 300.
Yeah, sure.
3 million officers, and they surrounded the town. They arrested Potocki and placed him in prison, bound in shackles. Now, he was slated for death. So, now a bunch of people tried to come to his cell, and priests tried to talk him into converting and to save himself. And his mother tried to tell him to pretend to convert or whatever, to renounce Judaism just to save himself, but he refused. There's even a legend, that the Vilna Gaon, with the Gra, the famous genius from Gaon, the leader of like the Jewish world at the time, sent him a letter giving him secret divine names that he can use to break out of prison. And he didn't, because he said, if God's will is I'm here, I'm not going to hack the system. I'm not going to use the cheat codes. Now, take it or leave it. That's the legend. Okay. Anyways, so he decided not to use the Vilna Gaon's thing. Maybe the Vilna Gaon did send him a letter. Maybe the Vilna Gaon told them to just convert and stop being stubborn, but they didn't put that version in. Okay. The ultimate sacrifice. So now we talk about the ultimate. Now, guys, it's going to see the story is going to it's going to get interesting. The ruling was given. Abraham's tongue should be ripped out of his mouth, and he should be burnt at the stake on the second day of Shavuos, the day of the giving of the Torah. He indeed rose to heaven on that day, and the Jewish people mourned bitterly the murder of this special man. All the Jews of Vilna prayed at home on that day, pouring copious tears. They peered through the shutters. They didn't go to shul on the second day of Shavuos. They just dived at home. They peered through the shutters and saw him being led at the stake, his face shining like the sun. He went joyfully like a man dancing toward God's mountain. So now this story is part of like the bread and butter stories of in Vilna. Like this is what they tell their kids. This is the story that they grow up with. Like this guy who converted, who was taken and burnt at the stake and went happily to his demise. Now, part of the tradition is that he sang a specific song. During that procession, when he was led out to be burned, he sang a song from davening, from the morning prayers in the siddur. It's right in the beginning of the siddur. You don't usually say it in the shul itself. It's in the pre-shul prayers. It's like in the morning brachos area. Okay. You can read the prayer, but we'll also play a video, which also we have the tune that he's saying, because it was also handed down in the tradition, and they still sing this tune in the shuls of Vilna. They always have. So this is their song. that they.
The righteous convert Avraham ben Avraham was sentenced to death, converting to Judaism. Refusing all entreaties to abandon Judaism, he was burned at the stake in Vilna on the second day of Shavuot, 1749. The grave of Avraham ben Avraham in the old Vilna Jewish cemetery was a popular pilgrimage site for generations. This cemetery was destroyed by the Soviets in 1950. Tradition has passed down the tune with which Avraham sang some of his final prayers.
The haunting song, and you hear in the song the incredible devotion that he felt towards to to Hashem and to his ancestors Avraham to a faith that he converted to. He talks about the how Yitzchak was brought as a sacrifice, and he's going to now be brought in a to die for the sake of, this is called Kiddush Hashem, to sanctify Hashem's name. We believe that sanctifying Hashem's name is something we do on a daily basis when we're alive. But there's an additional mitzvah that when someone wants to get somebody to renounce Hashem or to convert them or to make them to say that I'll kill you if you don't say that you renounce Judaism, there's a mitzvah that you should just not renounce. It's called Kiddush Hashem. It's a very holy, lofty level. And there's actually a blessing on, like, every mitzvah has a blessing, and there's a blessing. And we say this blessing every day in this prayer. It's actually at the end of it. It says, at the end of the prayer, it says, blessed is he who sanctifies his name among the multitudes. Right? In Hebrew, it's Baruch HaMekadesh Shemo Barabim. He didn't say that he didn't say it that way, though. He said it with Hashem's name in it as a real blessing. We say it without that because we're not making a blessing. He said, Baruch Ata Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, HaMekadesh Shemo Barabim, something to that extent. And so that's how he ended it. And so this song is really, I mean, that's a very powerful statement. And you could see why it made such an impression on all the people who witnessed it at the time, and why it went down in history with, all of its interesting, obviously details and versions, but the core story is the point of what happened. And we saw that this place where he was buried, it was frequented as a place to go pray because he's such a holy and righteous person. People went to his tombstone until the Soviets destroyed the cemetery, and we don't know where he's buried. They still have, by the way, how did they bury him? They burnt him at the stake. Some Jewish kid bought his ashes. They bribed them to get the ashes out of the pile, and that's how, and they buried it, and that's what they erected that monument to him. Now, is this fact or legend, right? We've kind of been leaning towards the legend part of this the entire time, But there's some recent discoveries that actually are very interesting that relate to this question. Not in the Cairo Geniza. More so. There's a lot of historians that say this whole thing is just a legend that people, a nice story that people came up with. But and that the best record of it is way after it happened. But they weren't aware of a publication by Rav Yaakov Emden, which was a halachic authority in the 1700s, and he was actually also a historian, and he had a very critical sense of history. And in his book, V'Yakom Edus B'Yaakov, which was published in Amsterdam, which is that more tolerant city that Avram spent some time. Rabbi Emden writes about an event that he heard happened a few years ago, which the dates, right? It happened a few years before he wrote it down. So he wasn't there, but he heard about the story then. So what did he hear? What did he write in his almost contemporary report? Page 34, he writes, from Vilna in Poland, June 11, we have an instance equally shocking of popish, which is Catholic revenge against the Jew. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I read the right thing? Yeah, that's Yaakov Emden. No, wrong thing. That's the London Magazine. Where's Yaakov Emden? Okay, we don't have that text in here. But he goes and explains the story, the basic elements of the story. Yaakov Emden basically explains the elements of the story. So he doesn't have that many details, but it does tell us that the account occurred on some level, right? And then we have another thing, which is much more recently discovered. And I actually looked this up online. You can find it online. I can send it to you later. I don't know where, but there's an article from the 1953 edition of an old publication called the London Magazine, or the Gentleman's Monthly Intelligencer. Yeah, intelligence yourself. So this magazine was written exactly then, at the time, just in a different location. So this is a real report from that time.
1853 or 1750?
17. Yeah. Did I say 19? Yeah. 17. Yeah.
Yeah, he was,
17. Yeah.
yeah, I thought the same thing, and I thought I'm just embarrassed in not knowing.
It looks so contemporary.
Gutenberg,
Yeah.
when-
Right. Yeah. So this is the report.
This is around the time when Thomas Paine would print,
Yeah.
Thomas Paine would print, all that stuff in the US, of course. This is
Okay.
reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, you can find the report. It was discovered by some Jewish blogger. Yeah, really. His name was he goes by the name Fred McDowell, the guy, but his name is Shimon Steinmetz. And he was the first person to call attention to this evidence of the story. Till here, it was basically just, from our side of things. From Vilna in Poland, June 11th, we have an instance equally shocking in the court of judiciary in the city pronounced a sentence a few days ago against an apostate named Rafael Santamoni, a native of Croatia, who, after being educated in the Christian religion, renounced at the age of 12 years, embraced Judaism, and took the name Abram Isaacovitz. While he was in prison, several zealous priests daily visited him, showing him the heinousness of the crime of apostasy and exhorting him to repent and return to the church. And for a day or two, they had some hope of reclaiming him. But they soon found themselves mistaken. He was so hardened that neither the torments he was to suffer nor the offer of pardon could make any impression on him. I guess this made the news. This guy was so stubborn that it made the news in some random newspaper. I guess they didn't have much to write about back then. The ninth instant he was led to execution. Being arrived under the gallows, the executioner plucked out his tongue. So that part was verified, and flung it into the fire before his face. And then, with his hands tied behind him, he was thrown alive into a heap of blazing sticks. That when his body was consumed, I'm not going to expect me to read that. When his body was consumed, when his body was consumed, I guess if I would have read it, I would have caused less distraction.
You could set it with a soft D or something, you know?
Or I could have done many other things, and that was not the. Okay. When his body, yeah, this is when his body was consumed, the ashes were scattered in the wind. This poor wretch suffered death with great resolution, not so much as a groan, or the least sigh of fear of having escaped from him. So we,
Yeah.
so this report obviously changes some of the details. Now it could be because the details we got it all wrong, or it could be that they got the details wrong. Either way, and
the core is the same.
the story happened. That's the bottom line. Details, I don't know. The main details that matter to us happened, but also they could have changed the names and everything because of the embarrassment to the Platitsky family. Like there was a noble family in Poland, Lithuanian influential family. They probably they didn't want to go and publish something about them. Like they're not going to go and do that. They had some kind of journalistic integrity.
So this publication, you think, is talking about
Yeah, it's yeah,
Has to.
yeah,
Avram ben Avram.
yeah. You know why? Two things. It says the date. The 9th instant is the date. It means June 2nd. I mean June 1753. And the Hebrew date is second day of Shavuos. The 9th instant of June. 9th instant means June, right? June. Does that mean, or which one means the second day of Shavuos? I don't know, but so that's the first thing. Second thing is, where was this said to have happened? Where was Rafael Santamani? Where was his case? He was arrested in the town of Ilya, which is where our character was arrested. So that lines up very nicely. And so with that in mind, that's for sure, it has to be that those are the same people. Avram ben Avraham must be this Avram Isaacowitz or whatever. Which means son of Yitzchak happens consequently. So you have these discrepancies, right? One is in the year 753. The other one, the traditional date was 1749. Rafael Santamani from Croatia was supposed to be Valentine Platetsky from Poland. And, right, so yeah, I mean, there's some minor discrepancies, but the story happened. And it's a very, very, very powerful story. And the message that it tells us of what someone gave for gave up his life and under all that pressure for and we have many stories like it. So yeah,
Yeah, if one word to be true, you know.
we have more. We can
Unfortunately,
right. But there's something remarkable, something about this that was so visceral that like it went down and it really was part of it. It's like even he knew the story. Where did you hear the story, Yosef Yitzchak? Oh, so he has like what is like a radio thing?
Like a little iPod type of thing with like on
They beam
content stories
content.
and music. It's great. It's updated online.
Yeah, so it's one of our stories. It's in the rotation. What was the differences in yours?
He didn't, his father didn't send him, like, one of the church
Oh, the church sent him to
parents wanted him to go. And then.
the Vatican.
No, to like just the thing in France, and then the person saw, and then they saw the Jewish person in like a vegetable stand, and then
Oh.
they saw him reading.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there's probably so many versions. It's very interesting. That's why I wanted to hear his version, the vegetable stand part. So yeah. So anyways, just as a wrap up of just to put a top on this, all of this, right? For ourselves who are not seeking to convert or are not converts or whatever it may be, right? Whoever you are, it doesn't matter. There's a relevance here that has nothing to do with conversion. Okay, and that's what Hasidus always does. It takes every topic and it's able to say how that topic is really relevant to everyone. Um, so um, now the sages saw a very specific need, a very interesting thing about converts. We don't pursue them, we barely even accept them. But you have this interesting statement in Pesachim, page 36. God exiled Israel among the nations only so that converts could join them. So after all is said and done, the reason why we're in exile, according to this statement in the Gemara, is that so converts can join us. We're not pursuing them, but this is a way for us to be representing ourselves, and so now people will come and join us. So now Hasidus has an explanation of this passage that just a little deeper explanation, besides for the basic explanation, which is that people should see the Jewish people and want to and see that they're and the souls that are embedded in the non-Jewish world should come back to us. I think that's the idea, right? This is a way of redeeming or revealing or getting those souls to emerge. But Hasidus has another deeper explanation that we have from the Rav Dovber of Lubavitch, the Mittler Rebbe. Our sages taught that God exiled Israel among the nations only so that converts would join them. Beyond the literal meaning of actual converts, this teaching also has a deeper meaning that is relevant to every Jew. Our bodies and natural instincts are a blend of good and bad. Our natural condition from our youngest age is that we are controlled by our negative inclination. In the spirit of the verse, every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil and not good at all. However, we were created in divine image. Our soul is a veritable piece of godliness. We are therefore empowered to transform our hearts and natural instincts so that they are devoted solely and truly to love and awe for God. We are also empowered to harness all of our thoughts and actions to this end, and thereby fully accept the divine yoke of Torah and mitzvos. When we accomplish this, we are converts, having transformed ourselves and completely accepted divine authority. So we have our own conversions to do. Everything in our life can be converted. There's a godly spark in our flaws, in our animalistic, in our humanistic instincts that are not godly, and by not just suppressing them and subduing them, but by harnessing them and working on them and elevating them and uplifting them, you are thereby converting them to that higher state where that was really there the whole time. And that's why, and it's kind of like you can view our soul as like kind of the same way that the Jewish soul was kind of in the non-Jew until he converted. You have inside of us, there's godliness it's besides for the godly soul, but there's godliness inside of our flaws. There's godliness inside of our selfish soul. And we, by revealing that and bringing that out, we're so to speak converting that part of ourselves. And you can apply this to the world as well, and to the mitzvahs that we do, and to all the things in our lives. So I hope we eternalize these beautiful the lives of these people. I want to hang a picture of Ovadia on my wall, honestly, right now. Like he's like my hero. But there is if you still have patience. Oops. Yeah, the key points. Okay. Next week, by the way, the influential Jews, people who had a tremendous impact on their countries, on their that they were in or on the world.
Lesson 1. Courageous converts. Narratives. 1. Onkelos was born into the Roman royal family shortly after the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem in the 1st century CE. Attracted to the revolutionary Jewish concepts of a single God who cares for his people and guides them, Onkelos risked his life to convert to Judaism. He became the author of the first translation of the Torah, a monumental work studied until today. 2. Long-lost documents uncovered in the Cairo Geniza capture the fascinating story of an Italian priest named Johannes, who converted to Judaism in the early 12th century. Johannes became Ovadia and was forced to flee his home country in order to live as a Jew. He endured wanderings and difficulties in his life, but he enriched Jewish worship with his liturgical music. 3. Valentine Potocki was the brilliant young son of a Polish nobleman who converted to Judaism in the mid-18th century. Known by the Jewish name Avraham ben Avraham, he was arrested by the authorities in Lithuania and sentenced to death. He steadfastly refused offers to save his life if he returned to Christianity, and he went to his execution joyfully. The story of his incredible dedication and sacrifice has inspired generations of Jews. General points. 1. Unique among world religions, Judaism does not believe that non-Jews need to join it, and potential converts are actively dissuaded. Nevertheless, Judaism does accept converts who are persistent, with the understanding that these people possess a latent Jewish soul. 2. Converts to Judaism are considered to possess particularly powerful souls. Over the generations, converts have made unique contributions to Jewish life.
Thank you for joining. Hope to see you next week.
Just be
Sure.
interesting. Yeah.
How do I stop this?
Hiring people.
Lesson 1.
Yeah.
No, it's
Sorry.
Organiza thing, it's like. Very good book on the Organiza.
I don't have any of books on that, but
You'll see online.